in real quick. The meeting is being recorded. Okay. Well, I'm excited to speak with everybody. Can everybody just drop in the chat something if you can hear me? Like something, give me a thumbs up if you got your camera on, something like that. I just want to. Okay, I see you, Courtney, Miss G. What's up? What's up, Romeo? How are you, Victoria? I see you zoning out. What's up, man? All right, man. Cool. Well, it's important to me. I just spent the last year virtual teaching, so like I hate speaking, and I get into it, and then I end up finding out my internet connection was messed up the whole time. So I'm excited to speak with everybody. Good morning, everybody. Mucho gusto a todos. My name is Tim Hernandez, and we're gonna have a good time. I will say I'm gonna speak for about 30 minutes today, and I say that before I speak every time because I'm a teacher. So if you need to get up and walk around, or like you need to get your little fidget spinner or whatever you need to do, I'm just letting you know I'm gonna be talking at you for about 30 minutes. Okay. And I'm really excited to be able to have the opportunity to speak. And I'm very thankful to the organization. I'm very thankful to Gabriela. I'm thankful. It's good to see you again, Courtney. How are you? And I'm gonna jump into what I have for you today. But I think the best way that I could ever hope to talk about myself with y'all is that like you understand the ways in which I come into this space. You feel me, right? I come from a very different background than a lot of different people. I come from a very eclectic background, and I exist in the world the ways that I do because of the places that I come from. Right. I come from, as you saw in my bio, I was raised in Colorado's foster care system. I grew up all over the state. I lived with 8 different families. I went to 8 schools before I graduated high school. But I always say that there are 3 big communities that have very clearly defined me. Right. I was born in Pueblo, Colorado, in a government housing project called Dog Patch. After that, I eventually was adopted by a family on the north side of Denver. And I say the north side very intentionally. It's in my bio and everything, man. I'm from the north side of Denver, deep roots in the Chicano movement, big organizing that I come from in my neighborhood, my barrio. And I have a lot of love for that. And from there, I became a first generation student at the University of Northern Colorado. Anybody else going to be a first generation student? Anybody else? Yes. Okay, that's kind of the point. All right. Yeah. So like I said, I was a first generation student at the University of Northern Colorado. And when I was there, I did a bunch of things, right? You feel me? I was a teacher. I still am a teacher. So I was teaching in schools. I did hurricane relief in Puerto Rico when Hurricane Maria hit. I did multicultural recruitment. So I was helping get brown and black bodies and brown and black people into UNC, my university, and diversifying our campus very intentionally. I even did things like student politics, where I was the first Latinx student body president of my university. And I did a lot of stuff. And then I was like, you know what, man, I think that we should try and just go ahead and try and become, and jump into something that I think would make me successful. And I took an internship working in Washington, D.C. I interned with the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute. I was an intern with Senator, who's now the majority leader, Senator Schumer, during the first impeachment trial, during a variety of different things. I'll touch on some of my experiences there. And where I street from, you feel me? I live in the same casita with my aunts. I teach the kids in my barrio, and it's really sacred to me. It's a really, really big part of my life. And I think that that's so important, because now that I teach in the neighborhood that I was raised in, you feel me, I'm faced with so many different levels of things that I was never exposed to as a student. I get comments like, it's so brave that you're willing to teach in your neighborhood. I get comments like, it's so rare for people to go and do well and then want to come back to the north side. I get comments like, you're a unicorn. I get comments like, you're an anomaly and all these blah, 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 blah. You should do this and you should do this. And I think it's really important. What I want my message to be to you today is that it's not, being an anomaly is not something that I'm comfortable with. Being an anomaly and being the only person to make it out is not success to me. I'm going to break down the ways in which I think that's important. But I think it's important, especially because if you're here over the summer, I know exactly what kind of student you are. You're a high achieving student. Believe me, bro, I work with students all year round. You're here in the middle of June. You feel me? And so it's important that as you might be a high achieving student, as you might have access to opportunities and colleges and programs and internships and youth summits in ways that your peers might not, it's important to unpack the privileges that come with that and simultaneously understand the ways in which we can leverage that for collective benefit. You feel me? Because when I hear things like, oh, it's an honor, you're so brave for being willing to teach our neighborhood. You're a unicorn. It's so rare for people to do. Like, it makes me think. It doesn't make me think about how great I am. It makes me think about the people that I went to school with. It makes me think about the people in the same barrio as me, grew up on the same city blocks as me, undocumented people who knew that they would struggle to even pay for college in the first place. They didn't get the same choices I did. It makes me think about the working class people like my dad who dropped out to do labor with their families in fields and in factories because it's what they needed at the time. And I got to go to college. It makes me think about women in my neighborhood who have one of the highest rates of teen pregnancy in the entire city. It makes me think about the students that I teach too, about the students who will never get the opportunities that I did. And that's not their fault. It's not because they weren't hardworking. It's not that they weren't intelligent. It's because we have a system that is designed and investing more in failures of people than in their successes. I am an anomaly for my neighborhood because so many people had to fail in order for me to have access to the resources and opportunities and choices to have the opportunity to be qualified as something that I am. And I think it's important that I phrase those things because you're a student in high school. I think of the students that I now teach. I think about the Black and brown men that I teach who are scared to enter a world where they are consistently and constantly perceived as a threat. I think about my Muslim students and the ways in which they are afraid to express their faith. I think about students like mine, Trey Lawrence, who was 14 years old and died of gun violence in a car. Because all of these systemic consequences are very real things that my students like Trey Lawrence aren't my Black and brown students, aren't the undocumented people in my neighborhood, aren't the women in my, aren't they special too? Aren't they anomalies too? Because we're all told the same thing. You have to go far away to succeed. You have to go get into the best college. You have to go and get into Harvard and Yale and all these other things. I promise you, we could do it in the chat right now if y'all want to. I'll take some space for it. We can drop in your dream college. And I promise you that we will see it happen. And what that reveals to me is not necessarily, listen, those are great spaces. I want you to find the spaces in which you can thrive. But what I think is important to unpack as we are talking about the ways in which we thrive, not you thrive. Texas A&M, we got Texas A&M. Lamar University, fantastic, bro. I love to see that. You feel me? Yes, drop them in. Come on. UT Austin, we got Yale Law School, TCU, Stanford, UTEP, St. Edwards, LSU. Thank you. We got a PVA and we finally got an HBCU on here. Thank you. Yes, sir. St. Mary's, Clemson, Baylor, UT. No, listen, these are great institutions. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like, they would not bring me to come and tell you not to go to college. That's not what I'm doing today. Okay. I want you to find the space that you can thrive in. Yes. Fantastic things. Keep them running. Y'all are ready to go. But what I think it's important is all of you are in this space where you're considering the ways in which you want to decide to be successful, the ways in which you are going to take the ways that you have been taught success and what you are going to mimic, what you're going to choose to do. And one of those ways that I know that you are told, as I was told in high school, I'm only 24, bro. I was in high school 7 years ago. You feel me? And so the ways in which I was told is that you have to go as far as possible. And I'm here to tell you, and if I was allowed to swear, I would, but I need you to know that it's a myth. It is a freaking myth that you have to go so far to succeed. That you have to jump to the hardest college, that you have to jump all these ways. And I will tell you that because it's not about Ivy Leagues or how much distance you put between yourself and the community you grew up in. That's not success. That's survival. Listen, when we come from communities and barrios where we are systemically disadvantaged and marginalized, that means that we exist to survive. We exist with things like scarcity mindset, and we have to go as far as possible because we don't know when we're going to get it again. You feel me? But it's not about that. It's not about how far you can go. Because I would tell you, like I said, I went from my barrio being the only person I knew in my entire family, my entire barrio, to go to college. And then I ended up and I was an intern in Washington, D.C. on the Capitol. Quite literally like the polemic ends of my existence. You feel me? Like, and for so many different reasons. Excuse me. Híjole, mano. Totally playing a sneeze right in the middle, high point in the speech. You feel me? But no, like I said, I interned and I worked in the Senate. I worked in the highest realms of our government. Thank you. I appreciate you, Abigail. Right? I worked in the highest realms of our government. And as a congressional intern, you do all different types of things. But I worked for the Senate Minority Leader at the time. And I sat in the impeachment trial, watched the President of the United States during the first impeachment trial. We can get into that later. But we get during the first impeachment trial. And as I was there, I realized that the people I was working with were not there for the same reasons I was. And I realized that the ways in which I was being trusted with information, the ways in which people saw value in me as an intern, was not because I was the slickest talking dude. It was not because I was the smartest dude. It was not because I went to some elite institution. I didn't. It was because of my perspective on the world. It was because of the ways in which I understood that what we do in Washington, D.C. is not separate from the communities that we serve. It's because I was raised by families across the state of Colorado, because I was raised by and lived with my teachers, because I was raised in a way that helped me understand that just one success is not success. And I had a constant perspective where I could hang that. I will tell you, I've written speeches about it before, where I was on the floor of the impeachment trial when Donald Trump, former president of the United States, was acquitted without any witnesses or documents. I was on the floor, one of 300 people in the entire country that was there. And as I was there, I talk about that perspective. But what is so essential to the ways in which we navigate those spaces is I can never, no matter how much distance I put between it, I could never run from where I was from. I would never run from who I was, who I had been. And that is so important to remember, because when I was taught in a scarcity mindset in the ways that I was raised was that I had to run, I had to go, I had to survive. But it's not about that. It's not about that. Because for students like mine, like Lonnie, who takes 3 public buses to get to my class by 8 a.m. every morning. And for students like I've had like Jimena and Greeley, who works in a potato field on the weekends with her family to help make ends meet, they're not getting the same choices. And I thought if I went all the way to DC, if I went all the way to the top of what I was doing, that I would find worth in myself, and I didn't. Because the person who taught me the worth and experience, the person who taught me the perspective that was valuable to me working on Capitol Hill was my dad, was my aunt, was my 7th grade teacher, was people who invested in me, my football coaches, people who sat with me and gave everything to me when I didn't have anything else. I learned this from my community. I did not learn it from my schooling. I did not learn it from my education. I learned it from the barrio that I lived in. And yes, I will affirm, I will never tell you anything else. Survival has its place. You have to survive before anything else. But I want us to be more than survival. I want us to do more than run. I want us to rest, bro. Take a nap. I want us to invest. I want us to care. I want us to be more than excellent. I want us to be mediocre and that be valuable too. You feel me? It's not enough to just be an anomaly and find the success there, because so many people did not have the opportunity to get there. The only way for all of us to do this is we have to be willing to be decentered and reject the notion that one of us succeeding is all of us succeeding. I reject that notion. Because we live in a world where we have enough money to house every single person and we choose not to. We live in a world where we could end hunger and we choose not to. We live in a world where we can pay everybody a living wage, offer healthcare, offer education, and make it possible for everybody to have choices that liberate themselves, and we aren't. We all have in our world a capacity for success. It's choosing to invest in a system where more students succeed than more students fail. And that means when it comes to us and the ways in which we navigate leadership, the ways in which we try to practice things, we have to be willing in ourselves to reject the notions that seek to separate us from those who did not have the opportunities that we had. We have to be willing to reject those who glorify our perseverance and our resilience without working to fix why we had to be resilient and perseverant in the first place. We, ourselves, me, you, Courtney, Gabriela, y todas personas in this meeting have to have a role in rejecting the roles in which we uphold a broken system too. Because privilege, when we talk about privilege, power, and I'm sure you've done some awesome work related to that. Listen, if you remember me for nothing else, this is what I need you to remember me for. Privilege is not about the choices that you made. Privilege is about the choices that you had. And when we're talking about narratives of success and how we push onto young people certain narratives of success, all young people still come with different steps of choices, different sets of choices. Undocumented students have different choices. Black students have different choices. Latinx students have different choices. BIPOC students, different choices. Trans students, different choices. What I'm dedicated to and what we have to all be dedicated to is investing and working so that everybody has the availability of choice in what they want to do, because our communities deserve the choices that we aren't getting. Which comes with a very clear caveat. Y'all might have thrown around words like equity and all that other kinds of stuff. I hope you are. I know that you're doing some fantastic work, but I need you to know that when we're talking about the way that we uphold individual examples as a testament to what a community is possible for, what is happening in that narrative, is we are fighting for equity in a broken system that only offers broken choices in an unjust system. I am not interested in that. I'm not interested in equity in a broken system. I am interested in freedom. I am interested in liberation. I'm interested in liberation because liberation is about choice. And I did not learn the reverence for choices that come within liberation. I did not learn that working in Washington, D.C. I did not learn that working on a Senate impeachment trial. I did not learn that being the first Latinx student body president of my university. I did not learn that visiting Harvard and Columbia and Georgetown and these other places. I did not learn that there. I learned this reverence for choice from my teachers. I learned it from my coaches. I learned it from the families that raised me, the mentors that invested in me and pushed me farther than I thought I could ever go, who fed me when I was hungry, who housed me when I didn't have nowhere to go, who taught me when I had questions, and who loved me when I didn't love myself. I learned this from my barrio, my community. And I think it's so important that when we talk about being anomalies from communities, I will reject it, and I hope you do too. I am not an anomaly of my community. I am a byproduct of it. The brilliance that exists in me exists in every single person that you are not giving it to either. For every Amanda Gorman giving speeches at the inauguration, there are Black women who are writers in LA, Detroit, Chicago, New York, all over the place in art programs that are being defunded. For every brilliance that people impose upon me and the ways in which I talk about my story and my barrio and the ways in which I was raised, there are people that didn't make it out either. People who died from gun violence, people who got pregnant in high school and could not go to college, people who were undocumented, people who came with different realities than mine. It is so essential that we understand, and I'm going to cuss on this one, that distance doesn't mean shit. Impact does. Impact does. Because maybe it's not about how far that we make it out of the messed up systems and realities that we are forced to live through. It's not about making it out, but about how we make it up to those who come after us. Because it is not just enough for one person to make it through, go to college. It is not enough for one person to leave the hood. It is not enough for one person to do this. It is about making it up. And we have the opportunity to do that. We have the opportunity to do that in our classrooms, our casitas, our public spaces, our businesses, our streets, because there's power in our communities, like the one who made me the one that I am, and the one that is making you too. There is power there. Invest in it. Listen to it. I'm going to be a part of making my community stronger because it's what made me strong in the first place. I want you to be a part of making your community stronger too. And that means two things. One, listen. And two, that means questioning the ways in which we are celebrated, looking at where the pain is most and why we are not getting celebrated there either. The only way for kids to go farther than what we have is to stop running from our neighborhoods and start investing in them. You cannot run from the hood, David. Where you come from, where I come from is so beautiful. It has wells of knowledge that our world is lucky to have and has taken every system to write out of it. Be a part of it. Nourish it. Because one flower chooses to grow, and the next thing you know, you have a garden. One snowflake falls, next thing you know, we got an avalanche. If every person chose to see the beauty of the community that helped them become beautiful, rather than the individual benefit that they get from being the anomaly, then we would know the truth enough to demand better for our communities, for our barrios, to demand that it is not enough for just one of us to get out. It is not enough for just two of us to get out. It is not enough for one person to get a full ride scholarship when we can pay for college education. It is not enough for one person to graduate high school when we can offer a quality education to everybody. It is not enough for one person to survive in a hospital when we have a healthcare system that prioritizes pockets over health. It is not enough. We can demand more if we recognize and celebrate the beauty of where we come from, the beauty that has been instilled in us, the things that they have invested so much to educate out of us, but that us, our ancestors, and our barrios have always knew that there's beauty where we come from. That it's not until we recognize and celebrate that collective beauty that is so much deeper than one example that then we can demand that we have systems that make it possible for all of us to get out, to demand that the beauty in our barrios has and always will be there, that we deserve historical designation, that we deserve reparations, that we deserve the ways in which we celebrate. It's because when we talk about beauty, beauty leads to empowerment. Empowerment leads to choices, and choices is liberation. That's the process. That's a revolution. A revolution is not everybody in the streets protesting. A revolution is everybody demanding better for themselves. A revolution is everybody thinking. A revolution is everybody believing, which means now we have the opportunity to be able to choose that. Choose your community, choose your family, choose yourself, choose the ways in which you are sacred and build that. That is the way in which we disrupt and anomalic one person succeeds systems. Because as much as we invest in ourselves and we invest in each other, that's how it works. Luis Valdez, one of my favorite Chicano writers from the 1970s, wrote this poem called En la Quech. I'm going to read it to you really quickly because I think it's so sacred. It is so important. It was a wave of the Chicano movement. I teach it in my classroom, and it says, En la Quech, you are my other me. If I do harm unto you, I do harm unto myself. If I love and respect you, I love and respect myself. Tú eres mi otro yo. You are my other me. It is so essential that as we unpack the ways in which we are celebrated, the ways in which we are succeeding, the ways in which we are doing these things, that we assess the ways in which others are not, because it is not enough. It is not enough for just one. It is not until we demand it for all that ours will be worthwhile. I'm not interested in one person saving a community. Nobody, I said this in the last time I spoke at one of these events, I will say it again. No one person will ever liberate us. No president, no representative, no one person will ever liberate us. We liberate us. That is the choice that we have. The ways for us to liberate ourselves is the choices that we have in what we share with each other. It is the ways in which we invest in each other. It is the ways in which we go to our barrio and say, no, it's beautiful here. It is the ways in which we listen to our elders. It is the ways in which we invest and create systems and demand it. What we're talking about is a fight for dignity in a way that builds beauty and power and choice, which means you have a role, I have a role, and everybody has a role in the ways in which we demand that power for ourselves. We demand that power be recognized by social systems like politics. We demand that we have more than what we are being given. That is, I don't want one student to go to college. All of my students are going to college. Now, whether that's an HBCU or an Ivy League, they're going to college. And so I think it's so important on this precipice of the work that you're doing, the ways in which you are investing your time, that we take that consideration and celebrate yourself. But I want you to do more than survive. I want you to thrive. I want you to grow. I want you to be beautiful in ways that I never could be. So I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I think I'm at about 30 minutes, Gabriela. But I really do. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate your space. Mucho gusto. And muchas gracias por tu tiempo también. Thank you, thank you. I appreciate you.
I'm clapping out loud. I'm just
As usual, you have brought the fire. We appreciate you so much. I am just always inspired by you, your work, and inspired by your energy and your youth. It is so nice to have your generation bringing these kinds of gifts to the young people, because they don't want to hear from the old lady. So it's really nice to have you here in the space. I want to give our youth a moment to ask questions, to ask them either in the chat or step right on up. I mean, Tim, I'm sure will answer any question that you ask, whether professional or personal. So don't be shy. You can use the raise your hand function so that we can be sure to see you, or you can just jump right on in and unmute yourself.
I'm gonna start it off because it's not really a question, but my sir, you did an amazing job, a great job. I know that everybody that's here in the room with me right here today, we was talking together. I was like, what you said that really spoke to all of us here. I want to thank you, um, especially because I was talking to a teacher a long time ago. I was telling her how I was afraid of coming out, going outside, because you never know what's around the corner or what to expect. And so to finally hear somebody, kind of say something about it, because I was telling my mother the other day, like, I'm tired of living in fear, you know, and it's not because of being an African American in society, but I'm just another statistic, you know, black guy, dress, glasses, and boom, no matter just any given day, anything can happen. So that, I know that really spoke to me spiritually and physically. And I just want to thank you, because not a lot of people that will speak up and say what's really on their hearts and what's on their mind. Some people will, go all around the bush and sugarcoat stuff, but you didn't. You're straight to the point, and I just want to say thank you. Keep doing what you're
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, bro. I appreciate it. And I promise you, bro, like, talking around things, I think is like, I don't believe in talking around things. I don't believe in using language for comfort. You feel me? If y'all want a comfortable language, y'all know where you can find that, right? Y'all got TikTok, like, right? Like, that's not my job. And so I think, like, I appreciate the love, brother. I'm sending you some love and hoping that you can build that power for yourself too. You feel me?
Awesome. I see Abigail.
I have a question. What was the moment when you realized that this is what you wanted to do? What was the moment that you realized that?
So Hita, can you help me out? What do you mean by this?
Okay, the moment you came from a very special and unique background, as we all know of, and you took certain steps to make and to step into the way you are right now.
Yeah.
But what was the moment you realized this is what I'm gonna be doing? I don't want to be this or this. I'm gonna be the person I'm gonna be now.
Yeah. I've been a community organizer for a long time, Hita. I've been organizing, like you feel me? Like I've been going for a long time with this. Like, and I think it's so important. I chose that for myself when I decided that I was going to say something when nobody else would. When I was a student in college, Donald Trump was elected president of the United States, and he chose to rescind the DACA program. And I went into my manager's office who ran our Dreamer engagement program to help our Dreamer students. And I walked into his office and said, hey, maybe we should organize something. Let's have a little rally or something. And we thought it was going to be like 50 people, Hitam. And there were 2,000 people that came. Like, you feel me? Like, I'm talking students walked out of classes, students walked out of high schools, elementary school students came and they marched with their school down to the rally that we were hosting. And that was the first time that I ever realized that maybe it was bigger than me. You feel me? It took me a long time, especially there's a reason. I've talked about it before. I don't identify with the term activist. I don't like the word. I identify with the term organizer, because it's about more than us. It's about more than me, right? And that was the first space that I will never forget. I was organizing and speaking, doing all these things. And then after everybody left, I was there. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning. I was sitting and the place was still humming. And that was when I figured out, oh my God, maybe this shit just ain't about me. You feel like maybe it does have something to do. And I think that was the moment that I decided to choose to invest in that, right? Because I think I come from a neighborhood with a history of organizing. I come from, places and around people that have organized for a really long time. But what was really, really important to me was understanding the ways in which we could bring that to other people. And so that's what I've dedicated my time to, right? That's why I'm a teacher in my barrio. That's why I work in Latinx spaces and working with young people and building that solidarity in themselves and that power in themselves, is because I had the opportunity to choose it when I got to college, and not everybody gets to college. Not everybody gets to organize. You feel me? So I hope that answers your question. Thank you, Hita. I appreciate you.
Yes, thank you for telling us what we need to hear, not what we want to hear.
Of course.
We have a couple questions in the chat. If you could go back to your childhood or any time in your life, what would you do anything different? And if so, what?
Oh, man. I probably drink more water. You feel me? Like, I'm just playing. No, man, what would I do? I'll never forget. I wrote a speech about it one time too. When I was in the 8th grade, I decided that I was going to really invest in this writing class that I was in, and I decided to write a poetry anthology. And I spent all this time in writing. And I'll never forget, it was big, and I brought in this binder. I brought it into my classroom, and I laid it on my teacher's desk, and I told her, hey, miss, I love writing. Writing's for me. This is where I'm at. And was really excited about it. And I'll never forget when my 8th grade teacher told me, people like you don't write. And if I could go back to any moment in my life, it would be to that moment and say, no, there are people that look like you, that identify like you, that come from your neighborhood, that have been writing for centuries. There are people that come from our hoods and tell our stories in ways that are beautiful and sacred. There are ways that you can express yourself that are valid. And I think that was so important. And that would be the moment that I would choose, because it was the most pivotal moment where I had to choose my own power. And if I could have built that myself so much earlier, if I could have built that myself in 8th grade, man, like that's how I think about it. I don't know, but I think if I could go back to any moment and tell myself as a young person and really own the things that I have been able to practice and share with people now, is really like the moments in which people questioned my own power and took it away from me. So, yeah.
We have the Abigail stepping up today. So we have Abigail Castillo now.
Hi, I just wanted to say that your speech was super inspirational and really powerful. And I wanted to know who your mentors were growing up.
Yeah. I that's a great question. I'm not gonna lie to you, bro. I've had a lot of people invest in me. A lot of people. I can name every teacher I ever had because I went to their houses on the weekends. I can name every teacher I ever had. Just do shout outs real quick, right? Miss Chavez in the 2nd grade, who let me stay in her house for a year when I didn't have nowhere to go. Miss Medina, my high school high school Spanish teacher, who sat me down and told me, no, you should actually go to college and think about this. Don't just go to the military. When I finally got to college, it was people like Tobias Guzman, Rudy Vargas, Patricia Escobar, Priscilla Falcon, great sacred Latinx leaders that built in me the ways in which we can choose and determine things for ourselves, and put me in spaces. I think there's two things when it comes to a mentor, and I'll finish up here, Abigail. There's two things when it comes to a mentor. There's a difference between an advocate and there's a different and a mentor, right? A mentor is somebody who will sit with you and workshop and get you in a good space so that you can go, and when you open doors, they're ready to go, right? But an advocate, and some of my mentors are advocates, are people who say my name in a room when I'm not there, right? There's a difference. I need people to help me open doors, and I need people to mention my name when I'm not there. And so building out those ways and understanding the ways in which I navigate and listen and learn. Jesse Tijerina has the largest Chicano literature library in the state of Colorado, and I have been to his house and sat with him and read through books. Like, it is people who took the time and space to find the value and worth in me that gave me every opportunity to invest that back into other people. You feel me? So those are just some of the folks, teachers, a variety of different folks. So yeah. Gracias, Abigail. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Abigail. We have two folks in the chat who ask, would you ever consider starting a podcast? Because of course, you're powerful and inspiring and fantastic.
Oh man, no, I don't. I would never do a podcast, bro. Just because I really do. I think when I speak with folks, I don't like speaking to folks. You feel me? I like speaking with folks. Like, I don't really like come and telling people and all this kind of stuff, because I think it's like, I like transaction, right? Like, I like stopping in the middle of my speech and reading out the colleges that you drop in there. I like stopping. Like, I'm a teacher, bro. Like, I live off interruption. Like, that's my entire life. And so, like, I think as much as a podcast, people have asked me that before. I don't think I'd ever jump into the podcast again, just because it centers myself in ways that I rather engage with people. So I think that's where I fit. When I got the link, I got you.
Another one in the chat, social media platforms. Are you willing to share?
Yeah, I can't. I got y'all, man. Let me type this real quick. It's really just my IG and Twitter. I don't really use everything else, but there it is for you. If y'all wanna connect on the socials.
And we have a ton of like thank yous, powerful, for talking to us like this. You spoke to me and made me realize how much I've grown so much in my life, and thank you. And let me just double check. Do we have some hands that I've missed?
I think we've got one question here, Courtney. It says, what was something that prevented you from listening to the negative comments? I don't know if we got to that question.
We did not. Let's do it.
Okay, cool. Samantha's question. What prevented me from listening to negative comments? The biggest thing that helped me do that is understanding that I'm flawed, right? And I'm not perfect either. And I can cause harm, and I can cause pain, and I can do things in bad ways too sometimes. I think when people have given me critiques and negative comments, and listen, haters are haters, like, that's fine with me. You feel like I got people who say things about that with me, but I think really there's two clear things that jump out to me. One, I can make real mistakes. And I think that's always my first gut check. I've told stories about how I've organized. I mean, Courtney, you were there, right? When I was talking about how I organized in the past, and Black women called me in and said, hey, like, actually you took space from a Black woman in this, and this wasn't okay. And as much as I could say that's a negative comment, that was something that was so pivotal in the way that I learned. And I was thankful to have that space, and thankful for the women that brought me in, because that's labor that they didn't have to give me, right? So recognizing the real ways in which I can fail is the first. And then second is affirming and choosing myself, right? Because I think when it comes to negative comments, people make negative comments for insecurity, for jealousy, for envy, right? Like, all these moving spaces in there. And there's people that genuinely disagree with you. But I think what's important is you have to, one, be willing to accept yourself enough to understand that you can be wrong too. And second, to accept yourself that, okay, if I'm not wrong on this, then like I know my truth. right? And doubling down on that in the ways in which I move in spaces, right? Intent impact is important in that conversation too. It's a nuance, but the most transformative thing that you can do is choose to listen to the ways in which you might be flawed and choose to invest in the ways that you have built power.
Excellent. Thank you. We try and center our youth and give them the first opportunity to ask questions. But if we have any of our coordinators or our adults who have questions, please step up.
Come on in, man.
I have a question. When you think about your trajectory as an educator,
Sir,
where do you think you go next? What do you think that looks like for you? Because being a classroom teacher is so powerful. You have so much power, but where do you go next?
Oh, I get this question a lot, man. I'm not gonna lie to you. Folks have asked me to run for office. Folks have asked me to step into different spaces to do nonprofit things. Folks have asked me to do a lot of things. There's two big things that I think are important. One, I would never leave my kids. I would never leave my kids. I never could, right? Like I would never run for school board because you can't teach and be on the school board at the same time. I would never do anything that would take me away from the community that I serve, right? If the community of my is the center pillar in the ways in which I seek to operate, I would never do anything that removes that from me. And so I think I'm going to teach as long as my kids want me there. After this year, I don't know if they're going to want me back, but I'm going to be teaching my kids for a long time. I get at the school that I'm in, I teach in my barrio high school. I teach Latinx literature. I teach Latinx leadership. I get to teach the things and empower young people with the ways in which I wish I could have received that power. And as long as I get to do stuff like that, going forward is really just icing on the cake, right? Like being elected would be a demotion from being a teacher for me, right? Like, because that means I would be removed from my kids, right? I would be removed from my barrio, my community more. And so I'm not exactly sure what that end trajectory is, but I think at the end of my life, after I've had whatever amounts of capital or whatever that is, I think I'd probably do something like a community center and offer, free libraries and gun violence prevention programming and arts programs and all that kinds of stuff to offer all the things I can't on a limited budget in a classroom. You feel me? So, yeah.
All right, thank you. We have Jocelyn or Esteban. I'm not sure which. Come on in.
Thank you for your inspirational speech. And I was gonna ask, with all the negativity in the world, do you believe you could make a difference, like in the world?
Man, hell yeah. What you mean? Yes. 100%. Listen, bro. Like difference is a difficult word because it's like we're told that like difference looks like marches at the Washington Monument, right? We're told that difference looks like what happened last summer, right? But difference is choosing something different that my family could never choose for me. Making a difference means saying, hey, like I actually think you're a really valuable person. Can we talk? Can we listen? Can we do something? Right? Like I think Greta Thunberg has this great book called Nobody's Too Small to Make a Difference. And I think that the power that I see in that, Esteban, is really just the idea that like I can make a difference in everything that I choose to do, right? Everything, every space, I have a choice to either uphold the system of power and go along with what has historically been present or choose something different. I can exist or I can resist. You feel me? That means that I get the choice in what I choose to. And for me, right, I think making a difference, the big question in there is just finding the space in which what difference you want to make. Some people want to go, somebody in here wants to go to Yale Law. That's a very different type of difference than what I do as a teacher. That's very different than the difference that Courtney might be making. That might be different than the difference that you make. But the problem with activism and the ways that we talk about it is that we're told that difference only looks one way. And that's not true. Difference in revolution is not everybody in the streets. You feel me? Difference is we need doctors, we need plumbers, we need lawyers, we need teachers, we need firefighters. And yes, we might even need a community safety system that actually keeps us safe. You feel me? Right? And that means we need everybody in those spaces. Everybody has to be committed to making differences from the ways that things have been in the spaces that they have available. You feel me? Is that, did that make sense? Or am I just talking? I'm cool? All right, bet. Thank you, bro.
Awesome.
It made sense.
Awesome. Thank you. We have a question in the chat and then we'll go back to our hands. How do you inform the ways that you critically think about language? I've heard you redefine quite a few terms, and I'm curious to what tools, resources you use to analyze language, if any.
Yeah. So my degree is in English, quite literally. So like language and reading and writing, nuanced semantics of language, diction, all that kind of stuff. That's like my bread and butter, bro. But the biggest thing that I think when I think about critically about language that one of my mentors told me, and I'm so happy to share with you, and if you remember nothing else, remember this, is that smart people don't have to sound smart, right? People with big ideas and all these things, if the ways that we're talking about race and criticality and anti-racism and all these things are not approachable to people in the hood, then they're not doing work, right? Invest in language that does work, because it doesn't matter what Sistine Chapel you try to paint of an issue, that this amazing artistry of words and fabrics and ways in which you explain it, poor people understand why they're poor. Black and brown people understand what racism operates like. Women understand what genocide and misogyny on their bodies looks like, right? And that means that we have to be willing to use language that is approachable and use language that actually matters. You feel me? Language that is just in a vacuum in academia in these ways of like, well, it's just this academic I don't believe in that, bro. If it's not palabras a la abuela, then it is not words of the people, right? Revolution does not come top down. You feel me? Revolution comes bottom up, which means those concepts and the ways we talk about it down here is important in the ways that those things happen up there, right? Like one of the biggest examples I use is the way that I determine, I do a lot of gun violence prevention work, the way that I talk about mass shootings, right? And like everybody's caught up on the semantics of mass, of like, it's defined in our society as 3 or more people pass away as a result of a shooting, right? We're not willing to ascribe that to people like police officers that are, justifiably, a source of gun violence. And that means we have to question the semantics in the ways we're using the word mass. We have to question the ways in which we are talking about those things as separate issues when they are the same, right? They're gun violence. And that means like talking about language critically, I did not learn that. That's not me being brilliant and having an English degree. That's talking with my dad. That was talking with my aunt who has a high school education, right? Sitting and listening to people and the ways in which we use language commonly. So, yeah.
Thank you. Ms. Trisha, I see your hand next. Step on up.
Come on.
Okay, so I'm in a room with like 10 of our Yak kids who are all Hispanic, Mexican, and them hearing the way that you were speaking and like just like your conversation where you were like pero and then like talking about like your abuela and stuff like that. So all of them were like, it's so good to hear someone who sounds like us. So that's super powerful to hear someone like you who is presenting they're showing me talking who's presenting in front of such a big audience sound like them, so it's super powerful what you're doing. And I just wanted to point that out, that we're all here, like it's comforting to know, like they said, that someone as powerful and as inspiring as you sounds like some of us who are just here in the valley. We're border kids, we're a border city, so we're here. And thank you.
No, listen, of course, much love to the RGV, to the valley. And I know that like that's such a difficult place to be able to come up as a young person, especially as a young Latino and a young Latinx person. Trust me, I understand. I worked like in Congress, where I like saw the ways in which certain members of Congress that represent that area are like mad disconnected with the communities that they actually serve, including Henry Cuellar. But all of that to say that like, it's something that I definitely had to learn too, Hita, like very seriously. I had to very seriously learn that I would change the ways in which I spoke around folks because I wanted to make them more comfortable. I wanted them to like me. And I realized that like the way that I speak is sacred. You feel me? And I know I speak different than a lot of people, right? People have told me I have different mixtures of different things, and that's because of the way I was raised, right? I was raised around Black people and white people and Latinx people, Chicano people, right? Like all these people that speak in all these eclectic different ways as a young person, right? And then I grow into this person that has this really like eclectic space in it. I shoved it down for a really long time, right? I'll tell you straight up, bro. Like I used to try and talk white. And that's something that a lot of young people are faced with. But it wasn't until I realized that like, oh, listen, like, you mean that the people that speak that way aren't smarter than me? I mean, people that speak that way aren't necessarily more talented than I am. They're just better at performing than I am, right? Then maybe the power was in my tongue all along, right? And I've told stories about how I've cut my tongue out for other people and let them change the way that I speak. And like now at this point, right, it's like it's me, right? Like that's like, and that's important for me to understand, right? And I'm 24, and so I'm glad that you're able to see that, especially in high school, Hita. It is so important to like, you don't ever have to change the way that you speak. The way that you speak is sacred. The way that you frame concepts and words is sacred. The way that your family speaks is sacred. Pero en inglés o en español, en todos los idiomas, like whatever language it is, you feel me, right? Like that means like doubling down on that sacredness. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me make sure we got a lot of stuff going on in the chat. Let me make sure that we have, there's some amens, some yes, some comforting, learn language, exactly. Oh, here's one. Someone says, what's your ultimate aspiration in life?
Man. You know, I've had a perspective on legacy for a very long time. My mom died when I was 7 years old, and that's why I went to foster care in the first place. And so since I was a young person, I remember trying to think about who I wanted to be. And when I think about like my ultimate aspiration of what I want to be, right? I don't want to be president of the United States. I'm very comfortable with that. I don't want to be anything other than me, right? And I think what that means for me, my ultimate aspiration in life is to be a community pillar, is to be where people can trust the ways in which I talk about things, where people can trust the stories that live in our neighborhood that I try to uplift, where I can bring to other people the ways in which I've built the healing and the liberation in myself. And that they know that we're going to do something about what is going on. Right? I don't think we live in a world of stratified resources. I don't think we'll ever live in a world without harm. We will always live in a world with harm. But that means giving people space to be able to process through the ways in which we harm each other. And that means doing everything and every system that we can to prevent it. Right? That's gun violence prevention, that's education, that's, you know, reevaluating public safety, that's all of those conversations. But I think my ultimate aspiration in life is to be a space in which people can build that power in themselves. Because I know how powerful it was for me and the people that built that in me, and whatever office or whatever space that me into, whether it's unemployed, you feel me? Like, I think Michelle Obama in her Becoming book talks about a job just being a space for you to be able to practice your principles. And I really love that notion. And I think that's where I fit, is building power in other people. So, yeah.
Awesome. We have a question. Someone said, we wanted to ask, would you say that your approach in today's speech is the same as when you teach your students?
Oh, hell yeah. What? Yes. This is what I get to my kids every day, except my kids don't like my speeches by the time November comes around. All right? They are not feeling it. They're like, Mr. Shut up. Like, we got work to do. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. No, man. I think with my kids, I take a much slower approach. Right? Like, I think when you're a teacher, you get the opportunity to actually build things in people over a long-standing period of time. So I get to always double down on these principles with my kids, but we get to flesh them out in very different ways, right? I get to see them build that power in themselves. And so I think my approach in today's speech is the same as when I teach my students, basically, right? But it's just a lot slower when I teach my kids, because it's a lot harder to, right? It's a lot harder to, especially in a community in a barrio like ours. Like, it's really hard to double down on that power sometimes, right? And so we'll get to points where we'll have high points in speeches, and I bring speakers into my class too, right? Like, and we're doing great things. And I know that those things are just as valuable as the days when we're not saying anything to each other, right? When we're not feeling what's going on, when we're feeling like, you feel me? Like those days are just as important. So I get the opportunity to be able to cover both ends of that and just remain solid in my principles and my core with my kids. You know, in Nahuatl, it's this indigenous epistemology of the Nahua people. They have, they call it teaching with one mind and one heart, right? And even when days when my mind's not there and I'm not feeling it and I don't want to be there, right? Like I hate teaching first period because I'm not a morning person, right? But I know my heart is there. And so I teach my kids with the same heart that I gave y'all today. So I appreciate that question.
Awesome. Another youth in the chat said, what would be the absolute first step you would suggest towards making a change and helping our communities?
Yeah. Listening. There are problems in every community. I just said that I was on a panel about gun violence prevention with Congressman Joe Neguse last week. Survivors of the Parkland shooting were there. And I said, you know, like, it's not enough for us to just care when things happen in Parkland, right? We got to care when gun violence shows up in every community. That means we have to be listening, right? That we can't just be mad when something happens at a Boulder grocery store. We have to be mad when a kid in the hood dies in Montbello too, right? We have to, and it means listening to the spaces in which people are experiencing pain and then helping them do something about that. I've spoken about this. I think I spoke to some students, Courtney, about this, the idea of being willing to decenter yourself is the most important thing when it comes to activism. What that means is go to your communities and ask them, go to your churches, go to your friend groups, go to your teachers and say, what is happening in our neighborhood? What is happening in our community? You know, I have so many like resources. Opportunity Atlas is a great one. It's one of my favorites. It's backed by so you can see, if you don't think there's problems, there are problems in every community. Go to a city council meeting. Sit and listen to the ways in which mothers are talking about how they want streets for their students to be able to play on, right? Like, and I think it's important, and doing that listening is the most important thing, because then you have the opportunity to organize within a community and with a community, not for a community, not for an issue with, right? I don't believe that, like, I don't believe in activism that separates itself from a community, right? I don't think you should go into a community and say, this is what you should care about. You should go and you should listen to the things that are happening, the pain that they're experiencing, and say, okay, well, here's what I think we can do about this. Here are the things that I think we could be benefited by. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. It's 12 o'clock, but we're going to allow Gabriella to ask the last question.
Sounds like a plan.
So my question is, because you've said so many incredible validating things, I feel a lot of people feel that because you're sharing your truth that they want to share theirs. My question is, before you leave today, out of all those things, what is the one thing that you would want everyone to kind of take with them from everything that you've said and to remember?
The ways in which you exist are sacred. The ways in which your family has built you are sacred. The ways in which your communities have built you are sacred. The foods you eat are sacred. The languages you speak are sacred. The way you do your hair is sacred. And I think it's so important to recognize that and to double down on how sacred those things are, because you get, like, you exist for you, not for anybody else. And you have to build that in yourself. You have to, because it's not until we all build that in ourselves that we have the chance to build it into other people, right? And recognizing the value of that self and recognizing the power that comes with that. Listen, I have a whole other like speech I could give about like times in which I gave up my languages for people that I was around, times in which I gave up being Chicano, times in which I gave up parts of myself I will never get back to make other people comfortable. And you do not exist for anybody else but yourself. The ways in which you exist are sacred. And that means that you have the opportunity, you deserve the choice to be able to choose them. You do not exist. You do not have to change the way that you speak, the way that you dress, the way you do your hair, none of that. You exist for you, and that is powerful. That's what I got.
Again, Tim, thank you for your talents, your treasures, your gifts, your time. We really appreciate you. If everybody can unmute, and let's give Tim a huge round of applause.
messenger told her we had to log out.
Everybody say cheese, 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 cheese. All righty.
Get on the screen.
It's lunchtime and you can leave on your video. Just stop your video, put yourself on mute, and we will see you back here at 1. Marie, I saw your message. Thank you so much for letting me know. Tim, you're the best. You are the best. You're the best.
Oye, muchísimas gracias para todo. Thank you. I appreciate you all. I mean, my IG's up there and all that kinds of stuff. So if you want to scroll through it again, that's on you. But I really do appreciate y'all taking some time. I really do appreciate y'all giving me some space. And I'm looking forward to see what y'all do. Okay.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you.
Adios a todos. Adios. Adios.